I've had this idea of talking about how I feel like a neckbeard for a while. I even recorded one of them. I don't know if it got deleted because I had to restart my Windows or if it was something else or maybe I don't know what happened to it. But I guess I'll just try again. Except this time, instead of just talking about like, "Hey, I'm inside all the time. I'm unemployed playing video games," and yeah, I think not that it's the reason, but part of the reason has to do with my autism. I really appreciate hearing stories, hearing people talk about their lives, you know. When I was younger, starting in preschool, I always had this feeling of feeling separated from other people, that there's something different between me and other people. And to this day, I still feel that way. And I do try to think about it. Why is that the case? Whatever it is, there's a difference between then versus now because I'm not 4 years old anymore. That's a completely different life. So whatever that divide is now versus back then, it's different. But anyway, it definitely got worse in first grade. uh, I meant to say kindergarten, but definitely first grade. Kindergarten felt it even more, and then first grade for sure. And by third grade, I just assumed like, oh, well, most people aren't gonna like you. If you ever meet someone, they're just not gonna like you. No matter how hard I tried to fit in with the other kids when I was in elementary school, it just didn't work. I just assumed that if I walked into a room with a bunch of random people, they just weren't gonna like me. I also got extra help when I was younger, so I had an IEP and I struggled to learn certain things like counting by fives or reading a clock, just, subtraction, stuff like that. Like, I got it eventually, but it was slower than other people. And in first grade, I noticed that the teacher would treat me different. I remember that, you know. She knew that I really liked Angry Birds at the time, and she even got me like these erasers that you would like put together as like an Angry Birds space erasers, and you put them together, and it looked like the characters. And I just remember that being like, "You treat me different compared to everyone else." But I was 6 years old. It was kind of whatever. It wasn't until I was in sixth grade. Okay, we had moved. I went to a new school. That didn't go out well. So I went to another school, and I remember I got bullied. Just full on bullied, okay? Made fun of for being weird, being different, just not fitting in. And I remember one day this one person had like asked me like, "Do you have autism?" And I was like, "What? No," because at that time my idea of autism was, classic autism, the more severe kind where you have to like you need help with a lot of things. But I want to say, I don't want to name like specific dates, but one day, it was a Sunday, okay? And I remember asking my mother, like, "Do I have autism?" And she turned to me, and the funny thing is, she was cooking burgers. She turned to me, she's like, "Yes, you do. You have Asperger's." And I'm like, "What?" You know? So I remember, I had a tablet at the time and searching up Asperger's and what it was and what it meant. And I remember it just clicked. So many people talk about this, okay? There's just this click of like, it all makes sense now, okay? And I remember seeing that, reading all the symptoms and all that, you know, uh, things like social isolation, having special interests, poor eye contact, just poor social skills, um, sensitivity to light and sound and, stuff like that. I remember when I was in kindergarten, the teacher knew that I didn't like loud noises. And the fifth graders would either it was fourth or fifth grade. they would have presentations in the lunchroom, and she had me just go to the office because she knew that it would be super loud and I didn't like that. But back to when I was in sixth grade, I remember reading all that and just completely being in denial, okay? And being like, no, I don't. No, I don't, right? But everyone knew. By that point, like anyone in the family had known about what, you know, I mean, they they called it Asperger's for the longest time. But then in 2013, they just put it with autism because when you look into the history, not only, okay, hold on, it simplifies the diagnosis, and throughout history, it's always been considered just a mild form of autism. They are the same thing, you know. But anyway, everyone had known, like, yeah, you definitely have autism, Asperger's, whatever. Um, And it wasn't until later on that I was like, yeah, this is just the case. And it just, luckily, things got better in seventh and eighth grade. It wasn't perfect, but things got a lot better in seventh and eighth grade. I didn't really get bullied. Um, just nowhere close to how bad sixth grade was, you know. But then 2020 happened and nothing has been the same since. It has been, if it's February now, it's February 10th. It is about to be 5 whole years since lockdown. How does autism affect me now? Definitely, social situations. That's definitely one. I don't leave the house, but I partially don't blame myself because, this is going to sound like an excuse. Um, Let's just say, to simplify it, cars. I don't like cars. I don't like being inside cars. They make me feel uncomfortable. Um, so I don't really leave the house much, which I know isn't very, like, that's not uncommon for people with autism, you know. But I would definitely love to leave the house more, in my own terms, my own merit, when I can myself, right? It's gonna sound like a cop out answer when I say this. It might sound crazy, but I blame roads. I blame roads. There's everything here in America is too car dependent, okay? If I could walk everywhere, I would do it. Uh, but it probably isn't the best idea to walk everywhere, and there's so many roads and cars, you know what I'm saying? It's like I feel like I'm stuck on an island, you know? And it doesn't help when you don't really get a lot of social interaction, and you're inside all the time. It's like you are stranded on an island. But luckily, we have the internet, which helps, but too much of anything is a negative thing, Um, and people don't act exactly how they would in person. In person interaction is very important, you know. Um, But other than like the social like interaction stuff like that, like other ways that autism affects my life would be sensory. Like this is gonna sound ridiculous, but when it's sunny, I don't like it. I prefer to stay up at night because everything is better at night, and also it's not so hard on the eyes, which makes me sound like, you know, some like basement dwelling person, but let me explain. Maybe it's not necessarily the sunlight, but just brightness. When it gets really bright, I start feeling anxious. My stomach starts to hurt. I start like my head starts going everywhere. I actually read this. Some people who have autism who have sensory overload sometimes might try to cover their eyes. That's exactly what I do. I lay down or I put on my headset to just block out everything. And I wish this is something that more people understood because it's like, what do you mean? No, like you don't understand how bright it is. Like you feel like you've been like flashbanged. You know what I'm saying? Like then like I said, like your head starts going everywhere, and you're just like, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, calm down, calm down. But then like I don't know. Um, there are videos on YouTube of like sensory overload simulators. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly how it works. Okay. Which also reminds me of how when I was younger, I didn't mind going to the store, but I didn't like how bright everything was at the store. All the noises of, the people walking around and the fluorescent lighting. If you're near like frozen food, you can hear like the whatever that sound is that makes the food cold when you open the thing. It really sucks cuz like everything is made mostly by allistic people. And it's not their fault for creating things without the thought of people who have disabilities, for example. But it really sucks. I think someone said it's almost like everyone is running on iPhone hardware while you're on Android hardware, or vice versa. You know, um, someone said you can describe it kind of like an Xbox and a PlayStation, you know? Yeah, they do the same thing. They usually play the exact same games, but it's different hardware and software. It's not exactly the same, you know? Um, I like using the phone example because let's say if there's a issue you have with your phone and you go into the settings, you typically know where to go, but it's not always the exact same. There's differences. I don't know. It really sucks that so many things is just too much, whether it be everything is too bright, everything is too noisy, which actually that reminds me. Um, I have my audio when I put on my headphones, I have them down really low. And what makes it even worse, and I can show you this, I'll have this even lower. I have the volume mixer even lower. Despite all of those flaws, and despite all of that, I guess this is where I try to think of something positive to say. How about that? We go on and we move on to special interest I've had. When I was younger, I already mentioned how much I really liked Angry Birds, but I also really, dude, I can create like a timeline of all the things like I was really really into when I was younger. I'll start with FNAF. I and I still do obviously know absolutely everything there is to know about FNAF. I could go on about the FNAF uh, storyline and theories for hours, and I have. I legitimately have. Anyway, I knew about FNAF from the very beginning, since before FNAF 2, okay? So, I've seen all the different eras we've been in, you know? Like, remember when we used to think that the crying child was Michael Afton, that he was a robot? That was 7 years that was way back in 2018. Remember when we thought of the puppet to be Sammy instead of Charlotte? Remember that? I could go on, like I've been there since the very beginning and just how much things have changed and just all of that, you know. Um, but I remember back then I'd watch all the game theory videos, all the Dawko videos. If you remember, I think 8-Bit Ryan still does content, but I remember 8-Bit Ryan, 8-Bit Orion, the whole 8-Bit Gaming channel, Razbowski, watched a lot of Markiplier, even though he didn't like theorize, you know. Um, yes, I used to watch Smike when I was younger. It's funny looking back at that guy now because, like, oh my god. If you know, you know. I also had a huge, huge interest in parrots and birds in general, mainly because of Angry Birds, but I remember that. Cheetahs was one. Uh, cheetahs, and I've said this before, the reason why I really gravitated towards cheetahs when I was younger is because of these Mallard stripes. They reminded me of the puppet from FNAF, And that simple connection made me want to know everything about cheetahs and how much I really, really, really like cheetahs. I remember that. Then I really started to like want to know everything about radiation, which sounds really random. And I blame, dude, it is random because you can't make this up. That's all I'm going to say. You cannot make this up. If you've ever played Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 1, you know how overpowered Toxic B used to be. And that simple character with you know, the gas mask and just the whole, radiation toxic thing going on, it made me think like, what is radiation? And I used to have these moments back then where I'd be like, what the heck is this? What is that? How does this work? How does that work? And I wanted to know everything I could about radiation. Another thing, which was very similar, was DNA. This was because of TMNT, okay? If you know how mutagen works and, the 2012 version of TMNT, that really got me into wanting to learn everything about DNA. I had, notes on it. I wanted to know everything there was about it. Another thing was black holes. And this started when I think I was in the first grade. I can't remember. But there was this little kid's book about space. And each page was about a planet or a star or galaxies or all that stuff. And one of the pages were about black holes. And it was just one page about black holes. And I just remember being like, what? What is that? How does that work? And I had to know everything. I had to know everything about black holes. And oh my God, I will say some of that information I completely forgot about. Exactly like how a lot of that information I've kind of forgotten about. For example, how a black hole is formed. But things about like Schwarzschild radius, spaghettification, you know, just like I said, I forgot a lot of that information, but I remember watching hours upon hours about black holes and what they are and how they form and what it means and all of that, you know. Um it's just so cool to think. I believe it or not, it wasn't Einstein that created the idea of black holes. I think it was technically someone before him that had this idea, but Einstein pretty much really popularized just a little more black holes. Like he's the one that really got more people to talk about it and think about it. He actually didn't even believe black holes existed, which we now know they do. But yeah, he had this idea that I think a star would just collapse in on itself and it wouldn't form anything. If not, it'd form something different than a black hole, something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, the fact that someone thought, if this can happen to a star and this and that, blah blah blah, it could become a black hole. And they were right is crazy to think about. It's like the discovery of Neptune, okay? Someone was like, hey, wait a minute. I forgot if they were tracking a planet or a moon or something. And they were like, wait, something's not right. That must mean that there's another planet. There's something changing the rotation, like, the pathway of this thing. There must be something causing it. It must be another planet. And they looked for it and they found it. It was Neptune. Uh, but yeah, space was definitely one of those interests that I used to have, but most of that went to black holes. Did I mention Pokemon? I don't think I did. Because Pokemon, I was always into Pokemon. I still remember the very first episode I ever watched. It was Ash versus Roxy from Unova. Um, but it wasn't until I was a little older that I got into Pokemon, like really into Pokemon. I watched all of the True Green 7 videos, all the Dobbs videos, Candy Eevee, which does she still make Pokemon content or does she just do like other like life stuff? I don't know. But she used to make a ton of Pokemon content. Um Pokemon card pack openings, and there's so much to Pokemon that people do not know about. I still will play a game and I'll just randomly just remember facts, you know, like stuff that the typical surface level I guess the best way you can think about it is like the icebergs, where it's like there's a surface level stuff that typically people who are a fan of it or not even a fan of it know, and then the deeper you go, the more it's like, yeah, I knew everything. Okay. Absolutely everything. Okay. And it might take me some time to like remember just random facts out of the blue, you know? But yeah, I knew everything. And people to this day do not know how much there is to Pokemon. Okay. The development, the devs, just, oh my God. You don't understand. But in terms of like other like special interests, I can't really think of many. But yeah, a lot of people will say that when it comes to special interest in autism, I don't know how to explain it, and I don't remember exactly what I was going to say. But you don't understand how much it consumes your life. The jokes are real, okay? They're not jokes. They are genuinely true. You don't understand what it's like to get into something and it's all you can think about. It's the only thing you dream about for who knows how long. It's the only thing you can think about, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, just it takes over everything. Your phone gallery, your history, whatever you watch, whatever you listen to, you don't understand. Okay? And that's what these specific special interests have done to me. Okay? And continue to do to me. All I have to say is that people will not understand. Like neurotypical people probably do not understand what that's like for something to completely take over your life for who knows how long. The last special interest to do that, it did that to me for months. Okay, months. You don't understand. Um, but yeah, that's all I can really think of. I'm not going through like a script or anything. Um, but yeah, that's that's what it's like with autism. It's not perfect. I don't want to be like too negative, but it does affect my life very negatively in a lot of different ways. I know a lot of people think of autism like, you know, they think about what they see in the media, savant syndrome, Rain Man, stuff like that. Oh, just picked this up for on accident. Um, you know, they see these characters and they see these things and they think that's how everyone with autism is like, and that's not really the case. They see people, horrible people like Elon, for example, and they think, oh, that must be what autism is like. You're going to be the next Elon. No, no, I won't. And not that I want to be the next Elon. Oh my God. Okay, people have a certain idea of autism and what it's like, but that's not the full picture. So when they see people who are actually like struggling, whether it's finding a job, which is they say 80 to 90% of people with autism are unemployed or underemployed, um with it being a 50-50 between people who are more on the severe end and the more mild end. They see that and they think like, whoa, well, why can't you do it if these other people can do it? And it's like, I don't know. It is a disability, you know, in a lot of ways. I understand like people don't like to use that word disability because it sounds kind of offensive, and it's not the same as like, oh, I'm wheelchair bound. Like that's a different disability than having a neural divergence, But in a lot of different ways, it is a disability. And I wish more people understood that and accommodated for that without being like, oh, well, you sound fine. Hypothetically, if I was the exact same person I am right now, but I sounded different, I talked different, you would think differently, you know? I need help, okay? And a lot of people who have autism need help. And what mean by that is accommodations and life and stuff like that. And it sucks that a lot of people don't get that help because they look at them, they're like, you sound fine, you do all these other things. It's like, I don't think I have ADHD, even though there is a lot of overlap, and most people who get diagnosed with autism have ADHD. I personally don't think I have it. But there are people out there who do have ADHD, and they think, just pay attention. Like, huh? It doesn't work like that. People with ADHD need help. They need accommodations in their life and stuff like that. They struggle to get jobs and live their life like people, like, I don't want to say normal people, but neurotypical people. It really sucks, and it doesn't help. And I hate to bring politics into this, but it doesn't help that technically a lot of those systems put in place to help people with autism or people with disabilities and neurodivergent stuff um are considered DEI, and they're like, we need to get rid of DEI. Oh my god, it's ridiculous. Despite the hardships, I do hope to, of course, get a job, and that way I can fund my hobbies and eventually pay for the things I need, like a place to stay and bills and all of that. But it will be difficult, and it is difficult for a lot of people with autism, and I wish more people understood that. Yeah, I don't know, I've been rambling for too long.